So for this video, I want to talk about a possible new theory out there. I thought of this theory on my own and came up with some evidence for it. I don't know if it's actually been out there for a while, but if it has, I haven't heard of it. I've looked everywhere on the web and really couldn't find anything on that. So with all that said, let's just continue on to the theory. Obviously, before we go any further, this will contain spoilers for the Walking Dead television show and comics. I don't know what range I'll be talking about with this theory, so just in case I do mention anything, I'm just going to basically say every issue that's out there now and every episode that's really out there in the show. Also, make sure to go follow me on Instagram, and I want to remind you that this Sunday's giveaway is a $20 Amazon gift card. All you gotta do to qualify is be a subscriber, like, and comment below. The winner will be announced in this Sunday's Walking Dead Q&A video. So to continue on to my theory, is The Walking Dead being told by Carl as an old man? So in other words, the whole entire story or series of The Walking Dead is sort of a flashback being told by a much older Carl, maybe in his 60s. Basically, the last episode of this series, or even the last issue or the last season, will pick up much later in the future, like 40 to 50 years in the future. Carl is now much older and has been the whole time telling possibly his grandchildren or the group of people that he's with the story about how he survived. But more specifically, he's telling the story of his father. Like it's Carl's telling of how he saw his father deal with the situations that we're currently experiencing or experienced with Negan and the governor and etc. Now I know it does seem a little ridiculous, but hear me out for a sec while I show you some more evidence. The first being about how the story is told. The Walking Dead, both comics and television show, are told as Rick's story. Like, Rick is the leader. He's the man that deals with everything. But what if there was a reason why Rick is the main character? Sons admire their fathers and usually hold their fathers up to being these heroic, strong men. Is that the reason why Rick seems so heroic when compared to everyone else? Is Carl actually telling the story as an old man and making his father out to be this strong, heroic leader? It's very possible. Just think about how Rick is represented compared to everybody else. He survived things that are nearly impossible to survive. Now I know there are inconsistencies in terms of story, like how did Carl know Rick woke up from a coma or even came back to Alexandria to find Spencer dead on the ground? Both situations where Carl was not present, but that's easy to answer. The story is being told as a flashback. The whole Walking Dead series is being told by a flashback, so of course they actually have to develop story for certain characters. Like, you can't make a television show or comic without character development, and that's why both the show and comics are focusing on these characters like that in these little individual situations. It's just all for character development. And also in the end will trick the audience, right? Because in the end, when it's revealed, it will actually be shocking. Ever notice whenever Carl has very specific scenes that they're very detailed in terms of what happens? Like, the story being told will actually take longer when Carl is there because it's something he actually remembers. When Carl met Negan, it took up a very huge chunk of the episode because Carl remembers every little thing in that moment because it was so scarring for him. Same with when his mother died and when Glenn and Abraham died too. But let's get into some actual proof that tells us about Carl's survival and why this theory may be true as to how long Carl will survive in this apocalypse. Kirkman has said many times that his favorite character would either be Carl or Negan. He's also given us clues as to Carl's survival after the series is over. Actually, here, I'll read one of his things that he has said about Carl. Carl is one of the most fun characters to tell stories about in this world. It's true of the comic and it's true of the show. Over time, we're going to start seeing more and more of this kid. What's awesome about that is, think about what it would be like to grow up in this world. It's one thing to have to deal with everything taken away from you and now have to deal with this shitty world you now have to live in. But to have barely even really recognized what the world is and how it works and what to expect, and then to be thrust into this apocalyptic threat and to grow up and mature with these kind of situations, it's going to make him grow up weird, is what I like to say. I think that right there is evidence enough that Carl will be around for a long time because of Kirkman's high interests in watching his character grow up in this apocalyptic world. He's also said that one of his favorite issues was issue 50, or basically the arc that had Carl walk around and survive on his own. Both in this show and in the comics had Carl very vulnerable in this moment. He'd learned a lot that day. This also gives evidence to what I was saying earlier about Carl's experiences being glorified in the show and comics. In the moment, Carl is dealing with the fact that he may need to survive on his own, and at the end of that episode, we see him actually break down, and he realizes that he may need his father more than he actually thinks. It's a story of a boy who tried to grow up too fast. The naiveness of a boy who thinks he's discovered everything for the first time, but really starts to understand why his father is feeling the way he does and what his father has went through. This episode and issue both focused on detail with that because Carl, as an old man, remembers this moment very well. It's something that has stuck with him throughout the years. It's one of the fondest memories he has of his deceased father, the first time he realized how much he actually needed him. Now, in order for this theory to be correct, Carl would need to survive the series, right? It makes sense, which I do believe he will. Carl is that one character that just can't seem to die, because when he dies, Rick will go sometimes afterwards. And that is because Carl is the one thing Rick is fighting so hard in this world for. Like, I know he has Judith and he loves her to death too, I'm sure, and I'm sure he is fighting just as hard for her as well, but Carl to Rick represents himself at that age. It's like this connection to the world before it all went down. To Rick, Carl represents innocence. The showrunners and writers won't kill Carl off for that very reason. It's why I highly believe The Walking Dead will end with Rick's death. It just makes the most sense poetically, right? The Walking Dead story is over, so Rick's story is over. And that's when we cut to Carl being much older and his story is now ended about his father. This also indicates that Carl may be the last of the group to survive. Judith may still be alive, but Carl is the last that could remember the events of the governor and Negan and whatnot to survive, which makes sense in terms of age anyways, right? Who knows, maybe Daryl is still kicking around at 90 something years old, or Maggie, maybe she's like this crazy old lady who built like the city of Hilltop, right? But that is this theory. There isn't really a lot to go on because there shouldn't be anyways right now, right? We're talking about a possible ending for the show. If they were to give any hint that it is being told by Carl as an old man, then we'd start to view this series as being a prequel or a flashback, and that's something that the showrunners and writers don't want, and I think that's something that we really don't want. It's more of a revelation at the end, something that's very mind-blowing. If they were to focus on this theory actually coming true, then I think the show would fail a little bit for it. It needs to be shocking and revealed to us in the end. Can you imagine though, like the last 10 minutes of the series cutting to Carl as an old man, just like sitting around a campfire with graying hair, or even just white hair even, with an eye patch over, telling his grandkids or whoever he's with about his father, and that's what The Walking Dead is really about? Like, it's about Carl telling the story of his father. And honestly, that's what this theory is all about. It's Carl's telling of how he saw his father deal with the situations that we're currently seeing in the show and comics. But what do you guys think? Any more evidence that can support this new theory? Sound off below. Make sure to subscribe for a chance to win the $20 Amazon gift card that I will announce this Sunday, and subscribe to get more content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.